This video is to help you be able to match equations with graphs. So the first thing I do when I look at this is I can see it's a multiple choice question. I'm supposed to see which of these equations matches this graph right here. Once I figure that out, then I'll go through and answer what's the coefficient and what is the y-intercept. So my first step is to identify the coordinates of each point when the two lines are intersecting. So I see those are the points where the lines are intersecting. The reason I'm choosing those is it will be easier to see what the exact coordinates are. So the coordinates of this one are at 0 on the x and 3 on the y. The coordinates of this one are at 1 on the x and 9 on the y-axis. The coordinates of this one are at 2 on the x-axis and 15 on the y. This one is at 3 on the x-axis and 21 on the y. Here's your x-axis, here is your y-axis. Remember that when you're writing an ordered pair or coordinates, that your x always goes first. I remember this by thinking about that x goes first in the alphabet, so that might help. Now, I'm going to use these points that I wrote here in order to determine which of these equations fits this. So, if I look at equation A, I know that the equation is 6 plus 3x equals y. Anytime that I have a number next to a variable and there's no operation symbol there, or anytime there's no operation symbol in general, it is always multiplication. To figure out if this matches this graph, I'm going to make just a simple little t-chart. I'm going to plug in numbers into my equation. So I'm going to say, okay, if x was 0 in this equation, I would have, order of operations says I have to multiply first, so I would go 3 times 0 is 0 plus 6 is 6. Now at this point I would go look at my graph and say I should have a point at 0, 6. And I don't, because my point is at 0, 3. So I know A is a definite no, so I'm going to cross that one out. Next I will try equation B. Equation B was 3 plus 6x equals y. Again, when there's no operation symbol between two things, it's always multiplication. I'm going to make a simple t-chart of x and y values. And again, I'm going to plug in values. So if I say that x is 0, order of operations said I would multiply first, so I go 6 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. And then I would look at my graph and say, do I have the point 0, 3? And I do. So to make sure that this one works, I'm also going to plug in 1. So I can see if x was 1, I would go 6 times 1, which is 6, plus 3 is 9. Then I look at my graph. I also have a point at 1, 9. If x was 2, I would go 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 is 15, and I also have a point at 2, 15. So I know that this one is a yes. Now just to be sure, I'm going to go through and check the other ones. For C, I would say, okay, if x was 0, I would go 6 times 0 is 0. That's not at 0, 0, so it can't be that one. If x was 0 in this equation, I would go 3 times 0, which is 0. And there's no point at 0, 0, so again, it cannot be that one. Therefore, it had to be equation B. At this point, now I'm going to go over and answer these questions. What is the coefficient? Well, remember that coefficient is the constant rate of change. So as I look over here, I can see that to get from this point up to this point, I'm going from 3 on my y-axis to 9 on my y-axis. So I am going up 6. Then I am going from 9 to 15, which again is going up 6. Then I'm going from 15 to 21, which again is going up 6. If it's difficult for you to look at your graph, remember that you can always go back to your table and see that you are going up 6 every time. So what is the coefficient? It is 6. Then it's asking me, what is my y-intercept? Well, remember that y-intercept is where your y-axis which is this whole area right here, is where your y-axis gets intercepted by your graphed line. And I can see that that point is happening at 3. So the y-intercept is 3. When we explain how you know, what you could say is, how did you know? Well, I know that the coefficient is the constant rate of change for the value of y as x increases by 1. So again, as we went up 1 on the x-axis, we looked at how much y went up. As we went up another 1 on the x-axis, we saw how much y went up. When asked what is the y-intercept, we said it is the value of y when x is 0, because it is where the graphed line is intercepted by the y-axis. So, the graphed line will always intercept the y-axis when x is 0, because that is the place where x is 0. So you can always find the y-intercept by saying, if x was 0, what would y be? Because that's going to tell you where your graphed line is intercepted by the y-axis.